This is great for our guests, our vacation rental guests.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them are like, we're gonna go stay on a ranch and then we're gonna barbecue steaks that were raised on the place that we were, or we're gonna make patties, or they cook breakfast sausage, you know, and then we sell, there's a organic egg producer out here and we buy their eggs and sell them in here so they can have pork sausage and fried eggs for breakfast, you know, that were all raised here.
Yeah, and then the view, obviously, you cannot beat that. You literally can't. If you've never done this and then this is one of your first visits, that's a hell of a first trip. Awesome. Well, I'm here in the great state of Colorado with one of my favorite ranchers, Jason Rick from Rick Ranches. And so, Jason, I guess if brief introduction for you and what you're about to show us.
Sure. So I'm Jason Rick, and my family and I ranch here in Western Colorado. We do direct-to-consumer beef. We sell about 35 beeves a year, both spring butcher and fall butcher. We sell registered Angus bulls. 2 years ago, we purchased the ranch next door, where we're doing vacation rentals and wedding venue, conference space, as well as a self-serve on-farm store. And it's worked out so far. We're gonna go look at our weaned calves. They're actually just approaching 45 days of weaned, having been off their moms. We pen them up together, feed them hay, give them all the mineral and salt that they need to make sure that they're ready to go back out to pasture. And so we'll do that next week. The bulls will go to a pasture, the heifers will go to a separate pasture, and then the steers will go to a separate pasture. So they're all right together right now, but yeah, we'll go check them out.
Perfect. I'm looking forward for you guys to watch this because I was actually back here in 2022, I believe.
Yeah.
And this place is just beautiful. So I'm glad to share this with you all, and let's get this going.
Cool.
So with the whole weaning process, because I mean, especially me as a former vegan, and so I still watch what vegan folks say online. And one thing that they do harp on is weaning, and they'll share videos of, you know, a baby calf in a car running away, and then you'll see the mama calf kind of running up towards it. I guess from your perspective, just what are your thoughts on just the whole weaning process, and for the folks that, again, are not in this process but have obviously seen the videos and kind of get the gist of that?
Yeah, I mean, I completely sympathize with them because when we wean our calves, they're here, you know, right where we live. So we hear them bawling, you know, for a couple of days, wanting their moms. And so I completely can sympathize with that. But on the same token, our mother cows have such strong mothering instincts. They will let that 800-pound calf suckle on her while she's still trying to grow her third gestation calf. And after the little calf is born, the big calf will knock the baby calf off and still continue to suckle. So there has to be a process in place to wean that calf, and also to put that calf into the next stages of our operation. So I completely sympathize with that, but the way that the system is built and how we utilize cattle, and what we have to do is we have to physically separate them from the moms, because the moms won't do it on their own. So, you know, so many people like, well, Mother Nature this and Mother Nature that. Well, I don't know if anybody's ever watched elk have twin calves and only let one of the calves suckle, while that elk in nature kicks off the other calf and lets it starve to death. I mean, that's Mother Nature. That's just how brutal it is. We are trying to do our best to set all of these calves up for success, you know, later down the road, whether it's raising bulls, whether it's raising replacement heifers to go back into our system, or raising steers that are going to go into our beef program. And so, you know, we focus on providing everything that they need for success, whether it's the cleanest, best quality hay, it's the highest quality mineral. We're using Redmond real salt with garlic. And then we have continuous flow water trough. So we have a recycled, you know, earth mover tire tank that has water going through it all the time. So they always have clean water in front of them. So, I mean, sure, it's stressful for a couple of days for them, but because they don't have any preconditioning or exposure to negative health, because we don't vaccinate them with anything. They haven't been exposed to anything other than the herd health that they're born into. And then the pastures, the way that we manage them, so they're not grubbing so close that they're going to get into whatever bacterial, mycorrhizal, whatever problem that they could potentially bring to the weaning pen. And now you'll hear a cough or a snort. A lot of that's just coughing up their cud, to chew on it. Which, of course, for me as an animal husbandry focused rancher, when I hear that, I'm always like, oh God, let's go find who that was and see if it's really a health problem or if they're literally just coughing up some hay to give it another chew. So, so I sympathize with those people that are worried about weaning and they hear that. But typically our calves are so big, the mothers are so happy to get rid of them because the mother's health is really starting to decline because they're drinking so much milk that the cows a lot of times will be like, oh, thank goodness.
Yeah.
They aren't bawling like crazy on the other end.
Well, the whole deer or the elk example too is really interesting because that's what I find pretty funny as vegans. Again, I was a vegan for 2.5 years, and to me, a lot of it is a very utopian viewpoint of this world. That everyone lives in harmony. All the animals, if we were just let them go out in nature, just would all just have a cookout together. Essentially, instead, it's very brutal, and like you just described, it's so. That's what. There's trade-offs, but that's what I love about agriculture is what you just described and what so many other farmers and ranchers, you truly care. You'll be out there in the barns if there's a sick calf in the middle of winter. Doesn't matter if it's raining. You will try to address whatever to take care of that animal. And that's what I always just find hilarious from vegans is they just really don't get it. And to me, that's part of the disconnection from the food. Because for me, had I gone visited you before I had that decision, I don't think I would have ever been one because my whole viewpoint was factory farming and a lot of that stuff. And that's what they typically only target. And this is also why I'm showcasing all this is it's just incredible. I don't know how else to say it.
Well, and that's the other thing too, is if you look at vegetable farming and the amount of tillage and destruction that has to happen to grow the vegetables to support the vegan lifestyle, everything gets destroyed. I mean, if you go till, so the voles and the gophers and the worms and the dung beetles and everything literally just gets eradicated to be able to grow the vegetables to support that too. Whereas with us, how we're doing, I mean, we're harvesting grass above ground and doing minimal work in the soil unless we just absolutely have to. And everything interacts together. Like we've had a herd of elk on this property for the last 60 days and all night long they're bugling because they're in the rut, and I did point out to them, but water is so scarce right now because we've been in a terrible drought.
I saw whenever we went through Crawford, it said starting October 8th that
so
water slowed down.
Yeah, so they're working on the springs for the town of Crawford's water supply. So they're only running on tank water right now for the next week. So they're encouraging everyone to be careful because the springs have slowed way down.
Yeah.
So they're having to redevelop the springs.
And then I guess it, because I noticed that there's is that the water line too, or is that
that's our side roll sprinklers. So that's the sprinkler system that we use to irrigate these fields. And so our water ran out August 8th. So we haven't had irrigation water, and we actually went 82 days without a drop of rain this summer. So it's been extremely dry.
I feel like we can go to the next spot, but I do have a question for that to just change the scenery a little bit. Well, I guess, is there any other things that you'd want to talk on this specific?
Not really.
Perfect.
I mean, you can just see how healthy the cattle are and they're not stressed and they're not worried about us at all.
This is great.
Yeah.
Cool. We're good? Sweet. So here we're at a field with what seems like to me an irrigation line. Is that correct?
Yep, that is. It's a side roll sprinkler or a wheel line sprinkler.
So how does it even work? How do you set this up?
Yeah, totally. And so there's a pipeline that runs across the top of the field, and it has a flexible hose connection that you go from a stub valve that's buried up into this. And so you hook it up, you turn the valve on the end on, and it fills this 5-inch pipe all the way down to the end. And then there's a drain valve on the end, so you can drain the silt out or whatever. And of course you have to drain it completely before you move it. So let's say it's drained now. Underneath that little yellow cover is a little Briggs & Stratton engine. And it drives an automatic transmission. So you start the little engine, it's got a lever on it forward and back. And when you move it, you move it 3 turns. With this size of wheels, it's 3 full revolutions for a set. Then you'd hook the hose back up to the next stub valve, turn the water back on, fills up with water, and then every 40 feet you have the little sprinkler heads.
Yeah.
And they have a specific pattern based on the size of orifice and a specific application rate. So like these ones are set to apply 3 inches of water in a 24-hour set. And then they have a little pressure compensator on there because obviously it's a pretty steep pipeline from one end to the other. If they didn't have pressure compensators, you'd have a lot more application at the bottom and a lot less application at the top. So this way you get pretty even application throughout.
And then when you said it was to a valve, is that connected to, what water source is that connected to?
Great question. So we have a reservoir that's called Gould Reservoir that just catches snow melt. So you have a basin up in the mountains back there. The snow melt comes off, goes down Crystal Creek into our headgate diversion, and then goes down the Highline Canal into our reservoir. And then we have a big dam and a release with a measuring device, and we release, and at full capacity, we're releasing 52 CFS, cubic feet per second, to go into the irrigation system to provide water for all of the shareholders here on Fruitland Mesa. And we actually have done a bunch of improvement projects. So those were Bureau of Reclamation funded soil salinity reduction projects. So we lined a bunch of the ditch with rubber liner and then covered it with concrete. And then we've also put in a couple of miles of pipe to help reduce the seepage and also reduce the water infiltration down into the shale layer, which then flushes that salt out into the Colorado River. And then they have to deal with that salt for downstream users. So we're reducing the salt load and we're also increasing the efficiency of our water system at the same time.
That's really crucial because water overall, but especially in Colorado and other drier states, I'm assuming that's a challenge. And then also, as a rancher compared to just being an everyday citizen, I'm assuming, are there different water rights, or is it, what's that world like?
That, the story or the acronym, or the saying is, in Colorado, whiskey is for drinking and water is for fighting. And that's because Colorado water law is the thickest law book in the state of Colorado. So you have prior appropriations, you have first in right, you have first in time. There's so many things that come into play for water rights. And you have upper basin users, lower basin users. So like for us, the water right here is 1899. Is the date. So it's a very early water right. The fortunate or unfortunate thing is it's in one specific basin. So we can only catch the snow melt out of one specific basin. And so if there's no snow up there, we don't have any irrigation water. So for the 20 years that I've been farming here on Fruitland Mesa, there have been 3 really good years out of 20. There's been 7 nearly complete drought years. So that means 45 days total run or less of irrigation water. And then the remaining 10 have what we call average years. So if you can irrigate from May till July, you feel pretty fortunate because that's enough time to get one good cutting of hay and then grow enough second cutting to have fall pasture.
How do you, on the years those droughts and just not great, how do you go about that?
So when we first got into cattle, we'd had 2 good years essentially back to back. So we thought it was going to be easy money. We sold all the excess hay that we had. And then that very next year, it was a terrible drought year. And I realized it early we weren't going to have enough hay to feed our cows. So I sold half the cows to be able to buy enough hay to feed the other half while cattle prices were still good. Because by the time that fall rolled around, you almost couldn't give your cattle away. Because that was also one of the times in the cattle cycle where there were a lot of cattle in the national cattle herd. And so there was a huge excess of cattle. And so what we've done now is we keep an entire year's worth of hay in reserve and don't sell any hay unless we just absolutely have to for cash flow reasons.
Yeah.
And then I found a couple of ranchers that are gentleman farmers, and they're just looking for someone to come in and cut their hay and give them a reasonable price for it. So I'm working with them and paying them a reasonable price for their hay, and I'm buying all of that hay from them so they don't have to deal with hay customers or making little square bales or whatever. So we make it in big round bales and I haul it all off. And that does two things for me. Number one, it gives me a steady supply of hay that's great quality because they're retirees and they do a great job irrigating. Number two, it's nutrients wise versus fertilizer. So nobody thinks about hay as fertilizer, but if you buying a ton of hay and you bring it onto your place, as long as it isn't infected with some kind of crazy mold or have too many weeds, you're bringing X amount of pounds of NPK fertilizer plus all the biomass, all the carbon that you're bringing on.
You said NPK?
Yeah, so yeah, you know, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So that's the typical three minerals that people talk about when they're talking about like conventional fertilizer, which we don't use any synthetic fertilizer. Everything that we do is either organic chicken litter, our own manure from our cows, or hay that we bring in from other sources and feed through our cows. And so when we're bringing that hay on, we might be depleting that farm's stores of nutrients, but we're bringing that on to build up. So we'll feed it in an area where we need additional fertilizer, bale graze, or roll it out just to build soil on our own place. And I don't think of it as like this is the cost of hay. I think of this is offsetting additional inputs from fertilizer that I'm first putting through a beef factory to then put out on the ground. And that's the thing that I'm trying to convince so many people to think about it in that way, because everyone's like, oh my gosh, it's so expensive. And I'm like, yeah, but if you're fertilizing anyway, stop fertilizing and just buy more hay, feed more hay. And then, because I mean, synthetic fertilizer is salts, and what it does to the soil and the soil microbes and mycorrhizae, and also all of your insects that live in the soil is something to pay attention to. And a lot of people just really don't. They're like, well, this is what extension tells us to do. This is what our soil analysis tells us we're supposed to do. And so that's what we're doing. It's a prescription, and that's just what we're going to do without thinking of the downstream consequences.
That's why with the whole regenerative talk overall, I know it's very polarizing, especially in the agriculture world from the producer side, but so many that I have spoken with that were former conventional, now regenerative, one of the biggest things they've mind shift was actually taking care of the actual land, the biology, all of that. They never thought about any of that. They always pretty much just thought about extraction. And that's what, to me, why I like regenerative the most is it really shifts the thinking of it all, of how you view what you're stewarding, actually being a steward. Because to me, as a conventional farmer in a lot of ways, I don't want to lump it all together, but there's a lot of conventional farmers to where it is just an extractive method, and it might be beautiful, but they really aren't thinking about a lot of the things they should be thinking about, a lot of things that you're describing and do think about. And so, again, that's also why I tell people to shake the hand that feeds you, so you could actually talk and learn about these things. Yeah. Well,
that's one of the things that they added to the soil health principles is context.
Yes.
See, because before it was like, living roots in the soil and, basic things, right? You had 5 things, and now they've added context, because I can't read a book that was written on land management in Virginia and apply it as a prescription here to Western Colorado.
Not at all. And we were in Virginia. That's a lot different looking out than this. Way different.
Totally, right? It didn't rain here for 82 days.
Yeah.
In Virginia, everything would die if it didn't rain in 82 days. And so that's the thing for us, is you can't like blanket statement, whether it's conventional, regenerative, sustainable, blah, 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 all of those things, because it's all in context, right? Because without financial viability and sustainability, there is no such thing as regenerative.
Absolutely.
Or sustainable, right? So if the farmer's family can't pay the mortgage, can't pay the bills, the rest of it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
And I encounter so many people like, you're doing such a great job, you're doing this. And I'm like, so why don't you support me? Well, what do you mean? Like, you're not buying my product. Sure, you're patting me on the back for working my tail off to do all the things that I'm doing to leave the planet better than I found it. But you have to vote with your dollar.
Yes.
Consumers have to support the people that are doing it the way they want to see it done.
And this, I'm so glad you brought this up, because this is exactly what I'm trying to get the consumers to understand. With the whole Maha movement, it's been overall good. But one, the farmers and ranchers are still left out constantly, and everyone still focuses on grocery stores, chemicals in the food supply, which is all good to talk on. But where does the food from a grocery store, where is that grown? Where is that produced? From the farmers and ranchers. But on top of that, what you just said, I try to say this a lot. Say Will Harris, he's one of the most revered in the space. And most people, like you said, they'll just they'll just praise him, praise him, praise him. But he started as a conventional farmer, so had they met him 20 years ago, they wouldn't have not said any of these things. So it's just like, you've got to understand. That's why I'd say shake the hand that feeds you, is so you can actually sit down and listen. Because a lot of people too, with this online and social media, I'm so glad you just said that point, because it's what you just described. So what I'm trying to harp on the consumer side is, they're doing all this praising, but they're not supporting directly.
Totally.
They still go in the grocery stores, which again, that's still fine to an extent, but if you have the means and wherewithal, and you also are talking about all of this stuff, put your money where your mouth is, or else in 50 years, our food system's not gonna be where you want it to be, and then you're just gonna go up in arms, and you're probably gonna blame the farmers and ranchers. Because that's another thing too, is the farmers and ranchers are always the ones that get blamed, because it's ignorance is bliss with all of this.
And we're an easy target, right? Because we're so busy working
and that's why
to survive.
And that's also why the powers that be come after you all so much too, is they understand the situation, they have the money, they have the power, they have the man hours. Farmers and ranchers typically don't.
Totally.
They're still trying to even figure out the whole thing. And so that's why I'm also doing this, is it's just constant battles and attacks, because I went to the Mod family in South Dakota, and then just talking to them, and then hearing them share so many other stories going on, and it's just constant.
Right.
And for me, I feel like compared to the average person, I know way more than I did 5 years ago, but I still don't know anything about this. And it feels like I'm continuing to peel another layer of just what's going on and what's been going on and what's trying to be going on for the future.
Totally. And
yeah.
I mean, CSU Extension has a farmers like luncheon, like they have a break. It's on the first and last Tuesdays at the research station on Rogers Mesa. And so I've been going like for the last 2 or 3 months, like I make my time that I'm going to and from errands in Hotchkiss to stop in there and sharing these experiences with all the different kinds of producers that we have in the North Fork, whether it's a seed producer that's raising, organic seed to sell into the market of vegetables and flowers and all of those things, orchards, market gardeners, farm to table restaurants, like they all come to that. And so we talk about and share a lot of the pain points, and it's wild how many of them are interconnected. Like a lot of it is over-regulation. It's regulation to the point where the big guys that have corporate lawyers that can write the plan know how to navigate it, but the little guy who scale is so much smaller than what the rules and regulations are built for, can't afford to do it within the scope, because let's say their clean pack room is like 4 feet by 10 feet to wash vegetables to sell, right? Well, that's 6 inches too narrow for whatever this corporate wash pack system is. But that's all the space that they have. So then they have to apply for a variant, all of this stuff, all of this regulation that's geared towards huge companies and has no leeway for the little guy who's like trying to do it right on the ground. And it's always comes up. But all of us are working together to try and figure out ways to either share. So like if you built one common space and you can bring your stuff in there, because it also doesn't make sense to have 50 wash packs if you can have 2 and just bring your stuff there and ship out of there. And so that's just another one of those ways of like, well, how do we support? Like if you have the means, maybe you should reach out to your producer to see, how can I support you financially? Whether it's a loan, whether it's a prepayment for a CSA, there's lots of options that people don't think about, right? Because it's not right in front of them, or no one suggested that idea to them.
Right.
You know, that I went and did a talk in Denver, and I was talking about like, there's times when like the mortgage is coming up and I'm just not sure how I'm gonna make it. Like we're gonna be short. And do you know how many of those folks and how many of my beef customers that were there said, how about I prepay you for the next 5 years worth of beeves to help you bridge the gap? Yep. Like they're like, we want to do that because if you don't succeed, we don't know where we're going to go to get our next beef.
And the good quality beef that they want.
Absolutely. With, you know, let cows be cows and let them do everything that they're supposed to do and not force them to do anything they're not supposed to do. And our cows only have one bad day ever, literally, right? They show up, they're like, oh, what's going on? Yep. That's it, right? Yep. Game over. And so that's another one of those, that's like the social capital of building this tribe, right? Because that's what I call them. I call them my beef tribe. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because we send out a monthly newsletter, and the feedback that we get of people like, oh, this looks so good, or we're so excited for our beef, or we're gonna come and stay, or whatever, right? Because we're going back to that village model, which is what built America.
And that's what we need.
And we absolutely need it. We need a processor in every town. If we had a processor in every town, that would change the dynamic of that. If the people in town could go into a storefront, retail storefront of a processor, and buy locally raised meat, whether it's pork, lamb, goat, whatever, that would change the health costs of our towns. As well, it would also help bring all of the farmers and ranchers up in what their products were worth. Because so many people are just cow-calf, sell into the commodity system, and never see the value, the true value of what the product is that they're raising.
I mean, like I was mentioning earlier with the new Nebraska one, that at the end of the year, they'll have 75,000 head capacity, and their goal is to hit 200,000. And that is just mind-numbing.
Well, and whenever I hear those numbers, I think of how much trucking to haul feed in and how much trucking to haul poop out and how much water, both drinking water and wash water, that's going to take.
Yeah, because, so for full transparency, you can look this up. I forgot the name, but you can just say Nebraska, new large feedlot operation. It's all on concrete. And again, yeah, they're working toward, they just got, originally it was for 150,000, but I guess how things were going, they worked with the local governments, was able to get more permits to where now it's capacity of 200,000, and yeah, all on concrete. It's just brutal.
Well, and that's what we found in some bulls that we've purchased that were raised in a feedlot, essentially. The structural integrity of their joints, if they're not having to climb hills, you know, in their backgrounding, the structural integrity of their hooves and legs just aren't as good, to where then you later have problems. So you're like, man, that bull's limping. What's going on? Because they didn't exercise, just like humans.
Yep.
If a human is eating TV dinners and sitting in front of the couch, they're going to have a hard time getting up and getting around. Like if there's, they have to do anything physical.
Yep.
Whereas if they have to get up, go out, hunt their food, gut it, skin it, bring it in, cook it, all of those things, it's going to be a lot easier for them to get up and get around. And so that's why when we background our bulls, they're in a 40-acre field that's on a super steep hill with the water at the bottom and the hay at the top. So they're having to go up and down the hill every single day. And our bull customers just say they have stronger semen, better motility and mobility. They have higher libido because they're fit, and they last a lot longer. I mean, because a lot of guys will buy bulls every other year because they only last that long. Like they either get too big or their feet go to hell in the meantime. Whereas I just got a phone call from one of our bull customers. Could you tell me the ear tag number of our bull? Because it got loose and it went into the mountain permit. And I sold that bull to him 7 years ago. So this is a 7-year-old bull that he's been using all of that time up in the mountains that's still mobile enough to go through the fence and get up with the poolies or the permittees cows.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, that's pretty evident of just like how important that is to raise them the way you want them to live.
Right.
So, yeah.
Sweet. Well, I think that's good for this section then.
Sweet. Anyways, this is great for our guests too, our vacation rental guests.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them are like, we're going to go stay on a ranch and then we're going to barbecue steaks that were raised on the place that we were, or we're going to make patties, or they cook breakfast sausage, or and then we sell, there's a organic egg producer out here and we buy their eggs and sell them in here so they can have pork sausage and fried eggs for breakfast, that were all raised here.
Yeah, and then the view, obviously, you cannot beat that. You literally can't. If you've never done this and then this is one of your first visits, that's a hell of a first trip.
Well, I came out here to water the flowers that my wife has out here and to start the sprinkler out there from our well. And the guest is out here in her pajamas on the porch, just taking in the view, having her coffee, and I mean, you can't beat it.
You really can't.
Like you said. And you can't make it up.
No.
I mean, CGI can't quite do it.
Yeah, they can try.
Yeah.
But it's not real.
Yeah.
And then, so I guess if you want to just explain other stuff that you have in here too, because that's what's interesting about farm stores. It's very personal in a lot of ways.
Totally. And so like Elevation Tea is a company in Hotchkiss, and she grows all of the ingredients on farm.
Very cool. Even
the stevia that it's sweetened with, she grows on farm. And then Rubicon Coffee, which is now Bauer's Coffee, but it's roasted in Paonia. And we provide this tea and this coffee in all 3 of our Airbnb units also. And if they like it, then they can come in here and buy it here. And of course we have, our t-shirts like this one and puffy vests. And then there's another company in Paonia that does the bath salts, and they import this, all their salt, and then they do their own custom blends. A friend of mine, Dan, and his wife do the Talos-based skincare. Fellow Bitcoiner and a cousin of my wife, her daughter does all the beaded necklaces and stuff. Lavender Farm in Cedar Ridge. So there, and then of course we're recycling coolers. So if we have people that come in, they're going to go out and see the Black Canyon, grab a cooler, an ice pack, buy some meat, take it with them. We usually have pre-pressed patties, but I think we've sold 240, because they come in a pack of 4. We've sold 240 hamburger patties this summer because they can just buy them, put them right on the grill.
Yep. And then so is this, I know it's self-serve, but is it 24/7?
24/7, open 24/7.
And
totally.
Have you ever had any worries just about the trust with all of that?
I actually had a Airbnb guest who was a friend of a friend come and stay. And I'm not sure what happened, transaction didn't go through, whatever. And I came and did an inventory, and I was like, very obvious stuff, and I was just, so I reached out to my friend. I'm like, hey, these people stayed. I don't see this transaction. So I don't know if she thought she was getting away with it or whatever, but my friend reached out to her, and of course she reached out to me. Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought it had went through, but of course I can look at the Square point of sale on my phone to see if it was even rung up or whatever, right? So I'm like, well, I can send you an invoice for the stuff. So we got paid. So that was the one time. And then immediately after that, I put in the Ring camera.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because that's what I would be doing.
But I don't pay the subscription. It's more of just a deterrent.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so many of like my fellow small business owners are like, oh my gosh, aren't you worried about people stealing it? I'm like, well, if they need it that bad, I would rather them have it. Because that's one thing that we've learned throughout this process is if we approach it with open hands and open hearts, we get blessed tenfold. And that's really like this signal that I'm trying to project out into the universe, because that's really seems like that's what comes in as well. And so sure, I mean, I think about it, and we have a lot of little kids that stay, a lot of families. Like we have a couple of families that this is their family vacation. Like they've stayed with us 2 times already. And so those, little kids come in here, of course. I mean, we got candy. You got a little kid and it's at little kid height, you know what I mean? It's like, it is what it is, right? But so it's not really a worry. And that's was part of the conversation I had with the gal that's working on her master's in law. She's like, well, if you had unlimited funds, what would you institute for safety or security measures? And I'm like, honestly, if I had unlimited funds, I would buy another ranch and build a brand new USDA processing facility. I would not even think twice about security at all, because it's really needed. Like the USDA plant that we'd used for the last 10 years got bought out by another plant. And so we've been scrambling, trying to find a processor that does a good enough job and can work with us on packaging. And we're still in the hunt. But ideally we would own it, and therefore we could control all of it.
Absolutely.
This was the equipment barn. So originally this is where you'd park your equipment for the winter. The building up there where the farm store is the shop. That's where most of the maintenance was. It's got 220 plugs for welders, air compressors, and stuff like that. This did not have power to it. So that's one of the first things we did is we ran power here. And then like we sourced most of the wood from the local sawmill. The wood across the back, actually my dad and I milled on his band mill.
That's cool.
So it was a great project together. The benches we built, so I traded ground beef for the aspen logs, and then my dad and I milled the lumber, and then a friend and I put them all together. So we kind of figured out the design that would be stable enough to have a bunch of people piled on there, use the lumber that we had, and then like the little rough cut feet is leftover lumber from this project. So nothing went to waste, and anything that was too small is firewood for the fire pit for our sheep camp listing, which is super popular. We have people come from Denver just come camp without having to bring sleeping bags and stuff and have the camping experience, and just decompress.
And then I'm assuming for the weddings, you just set them up and then they just walk up to that? Or
yes.
It's very customizable?
It's whatever they want to do. So oftentimes we have tables and chairs. There's some of the tables are in here, but the last wedding that we had actually used the hay barn because it's much bigger space. And they rented a dance floor. So here, this is like oftentimes the reception area. So it's tables and chairs set up, head table across the back, whatever. Or it's the backup if there's inclement weather. And we should probably really go out and look at like what the ceremony site is. Because it's literally out in this field out here, and it's the backdrop you just can't make up.
Then we should go, let's go to that.
But yeah, we call this the wedding barn. It's like all locally sourced wood. The trees were logged in a local forest, milled in a local sawmill and then put up here. So yeah, it's been a fun project. And I mean, if people go on our website, they can see some photos of how they've decorated everything. And because every bride and mother of the bride has their own vision.
Yeah.
And I am just always so impressed by what they come up with. So
Very cool.
yeah.
It's just another cool aspect of, I guess, owning a farm or ranch is just figuring out extra things you could possibly add on. Because then also that just adds to, in a way, kind of bridging the gap for some folks that go to these weddings. They might have never gone to a ranch. Who knows, that might be the break the camel's back and get the wheel spinning in their head.
Totally. And
I mean, especially with this view, it's just, it leaves you speechless.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's for us, for me being born and raised here, to every day not take it for granted, because not everyone gets to wake up to this every single day.
Right.
So yeah, and I love sharing it with other people. I mean, because a lot of people that come and stay, they look into the description on our, short-term rentals, and they're like, what does regenerative ranch mean? So it gives me the opportunity to light that spark in their mind of like a different way to think of things, and also a way to look when they're in the grocery store, or look when they're looking to source food. Like, what does this mean? And does this meet the criteria of what we're trying to feed our family? So that's just another opportunity for us to like you said, you have to be the change you want to see, and you have to be willing to communicate that with the consumers.
Absolutely.
So this just gives us another opportunity to have a touch point, to have them think of, oh, people do it differently. We do have other options.
Absolutely.
So they're big. Sandhills, like the extreme eastern half of Wyoming.
And then, so how do you manage this herd?
As far as what?
Well,
So
because they're in this paddock right now, how long have they been where they're at currently?
Yep, so they've been in here 2.5 weeks. So Steak Eater Mike helped me haul some when he was here visiting me, and picking up his half a beef. And my truck was actually in the shop. So we just used his pickup with my little bumper pull trailer and hauled some. So they've been in here 2 weeks. They'll be in here 1 more week, and then they'll go over to that adjacent pasture next door. And because essentially right here, we're in fall dormant grass, because this is all cool season grass that's growing in here right now. And so it's essentially gone to seed and it's dormant. So we aren't going to hurt it by grazing it hard right now. And then of course it's going to have all winter and all spring to rest. And it's irrigated as well. And so that's an advantage that we have on this property, is this is all cool season improved grasses. There's also some alfalfa and some clover in here as well, but it's all going to get irrigated. And so what we did here is, you can look over there, we cut the second cutting hay off. You see how short it is? This field, we left it standing with the idea that we were going to graze it, because we were going to come here, because we're actually slated to start calving the first week of December. So that way everybody's going to be close to home. So we'll graze this, we'll graze that, we'll graze that. We'll go down to the 80 that's adjacent to our home place, graze that, and then we'll be on our home place where the calving barn is, and the squeeze chute and all of that stuff. So everything's close in case we have any problems. But there's also some fall-born calves in here. We had tried having 2 separate calving herds, so we would have beef to butcher in the spring and beef to butcher in the fall, and it just ended up being more work. But because
there's a couple little ones.
Totally, because the fertility is so good, I figured 35 days postpartum, I wouldn't have to worry about those cows settling and breeding, but they did. So they calved their fall calves. The bulls were still with them. I'm like, oh, I've got a month to worry about it. They won't start cycling again. Well, they did. And we ended up with 5 calves born in that 35-day window, from after their moms had calved to when they started cycling and bred up again. So that's good and bad. It's good. I mean, live calves are better than no calves. It's just they don't really fit. So, and these guys haven't even been branded because though we'd taken all those cows to another pasture after we'd branded all the spring-born calves,
Yeah.
not even thinking. You go out, check cows, and you're like, oh,
There's a
here's
couple more.
another new one. So, but yeah. And that's what's funny. Cattle are so inquisitive. Like if we go out and hang out in the wean calves and just stand there for a while, they'll come up and they'll start like they'll reach out and lick you to see like, well, what do you have anything good for us to eat? Do you have a snack or something for us?
I mean, they're getting curious already as is.
Yeah. Well, and that's that one there with that ripped her number ear tag out of her left ear is my son's 4-H project, and she's literally tame. So she's one of the ones that if you had a treat, you know, like a piece of cow cake or something, she would take it right out of your hand.
What about this one? Nope.